Chapter 5, The Making of a Revolution. Chapter 5, Section 1, Preludes to Revolution. As European populations grew in North America, they began making claims to the same tracts of land, all while ignoring and or creating alliances with various native populations. In the 1750s, the British and French claims began to overlap, leading to conflict. In 1754, George Washington led British troops to assert Britain's claim to the Ohio River Valley, which the French viewed as trespassing. The ensuing skirmish ended in Washington retreating before surrendering, and this event would help lead to the French and Indian War. The French and Indian War. The French and Indian War was more complex than just the groups named. The war pitted England, Prussia, which is present-day Germany, British Calcutta in present-day India, the Iroquois nation, verse France, Russia, Austria, Sweden, Saxony, French Bengal, the Ottawa, Delaware, and Shawnee Native American tribes. During the war, the British were able to take Goree, the slave-trading island off the coast of Senegal, where Europeans came to buy slaves. The British were also able to take the French West Indies, where France produced sugar. The British then promised the Delaware tribe there would be no white settlement west of the Appalachian Mountain Range. The Delaware then abandoned the French and joined the British. The British also were able to take control of Quebec, the capital of New France. Spain entered the war in 1761 to help France, but it was too late. In the early 1760s, France and England grew tired of fighting. They were tired of the expenses and higher taxes and agreed to make peace. The peace agreement was called the Treaty of Paris. The treaty included France ceding Canada and land east of the Mississippi to Britain. Spain ceded Florida to Britain in exchange for Cuba and the Philippines. France ceded New Orleans and land west of the Mississippi to Spain for helping them. France was now completely out of the North American mainland. Pontiac and Indian responses. After the French and Indian War, Britain no longer needed the Iroquois or their other Native American allies because there was no rivalry with France. So in 1763, Pontiac, the Ottawa chief, organized a rebellion against the British. France promised Pontiac that the French would send help to the Native Americans, but then backed off, and Pontiac initiated peace talks with the British. Pontiac was murdered for surrendering to the British so easily. The Proclamation Line of 1763. One of the results of the French and Indian War was the British keeping their word to the Delaware about Western settlement. The Proclamation Line was issued in October 1763 by British Parliament, forbidding British colonists to settle west of the Appalachian Mountains. The British were keeping their promise to Native Americans that their rights to the lands west of the Appalachian Mountains would be protected. The colonists were furious because they felt they had just won the war for that land, but the British did not want to continue to pay to protect settlers moving west beyond the Proclamation Line. Britain, however, was too far away to enforce the line and couldn't stop westward expansion by white settlers, but the Proclamation of 1763 did slow some settlement. Colonial resistance to the Proclamation of 1763 included groups like the Paxton Boys from Pennsylvania, who gave themselves authorization to exterminate Native Americans to end the conflict between the two sides. Please pause your video and take a few minutes to answer the 4 review questions.